Right now, somewhere in your house, your phone is buzzing. You check it. Nobody important. You put it down. You pick it up again 4 minutes later. It feels like a habit. It feels like nothing. But the real answer is far stranger. Your body is not checking your phone because you are bored. Your body is checking your phone because for most of human history, being alone for too long meant you were about to die. Think about that for a second. Not metaphorically, literally. For nearly all of the last 200,000 years, a human being on their own was a human being in danger. No walls, no locks, no emergency numbers. Just you, the dark, and whatever was out there. A lone human could not fight off a predator alone, could not gather enough food alone, could not raise a child alone. Survival was never a solo activity. It was a group project, and if you got voted off the group, you usually did not last long. So your brain built an alarm system for it. A very old, very loud alarm system. You call it loneliness. Your ancestors would have called it a warning. Here is where it gets strange. That warning system never got the memo that the world changed. You can survive completely alone today. You can order food without speaking to a human. You can work from a bedroom, talk to a screen, and never once need another person to keep you alive. And yet, the alarm still goes off exactly the way it did when a lion was involved. Isn't that odd? A threat that no longer exists, still triggering a response built to save your life. In the late 1990s, a researcher named John Cacioppo decided to actually study this. Cacioppo was a neuroscientist at the University of Chicago, and he became one of the first scientists to treat loneliness not as a feeling, but as a biological state. He wanted to know what isolation actually does inside the human body. Not what it feels like, what it does. What he found should worry you a little. Chronic loneliness raises cortisol, the stress hormone your body releases when it senses danger. It disrupts sleep. It weakens the immune system's ability to fight off illness. Cacioppo's research linked prolonged loneliness to inflammation levels similar to those seen in people under constant physical threat. Your body, in other words, cannot tell the difference between a saber-toothed cat and an empty apartment. Both say the same thing to your nervous system. You are exposed. You are unprotected. Something needs to change, and your brain does not wait patiently for you to fix it. Loneliness produces something researchers call hypervigilance for social threat. That means an isolated brain starts scanning for danger more aggressively than a connected one. Ironically, this often makes lonely people more suspicious of others, more likely to interpret a neutral comment as an insult, more likely to expect rejection before it happens. The ancient alarm meant to push you toward people instead starts pushing people away. A survival mechanism misfiring in a modern world it was never designed for. But the story gets bigger than mood and stranger than most people expect. In 2010, a researcher named Julianne Holt-Lunstad led a massive analysis combining data from over 300,000 people. She wanted to know how strongly social connection actually predicted whether someone lived or died. The result was almost unbelievable. Weak social ties were associated with a higher risk of early death, comparable to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Higher risk than obesity. Higher risk than physical inactivity. Read that again. Loneliness, statistically, can be as dangerous as a pack of cigarettes. Why would isolation carry that kind of weight? Because your body was never built to run its systems alone for long. Heart rate regulation, stress recovery, even wound healing, all of it functions more efficiently when you are embedded in a group. Your ancestors' bodies literally borrowed stability from the people around them. Shared warmth, shared watchfulness, shared rest, because someone else was awake to guard the fire. Take the group away, and the body has to do all of that regulation on its own, constantly, with no relief. Over years, that wears a person down the same way a car engine wears down if it never gets to idle. There is one more piece of this puzzle, and it might be the most convincing of all. Starting in 1938, researchers at Harvard began tracking a group of men through their entire lives. and eventually their children too, in what became one of the longest running studies of human happiness ever conducted. Decades later, the study's director, Robert Waldinger, summarized the findings in a single blunt sentence. The people who stayed most connected to others were the happiest, the healthiest, and the ones who lived the longest. Not the wealthiest, not the most accomplished, the most connected. Waldinger's team found something else too. It was not about how many friends someone had. It was about the quality of the relationships. A person with one or two people they could truly count on showed better outcomes than a person surrounded by dozens of casual acquaintances. Your brain, it turns out, is not counting your follower list. It is asking a much older question. If something went wrong tonight, who would show up? Sit with that question for a moment. Who would show up? That question is doing more work in your body than you realize. Every time your brain cannot answer it confidently, some part of that ancient alarm system stays lit. Low, quiet, constant, not panic, just a hum of unease you have learned to live with and maybe stopped noticing entirely. This is why isolation does not just make you sad. It makes you unsafe at a level your conscious mind rarely acknowledges. Your ancestors did not fear loneliness because they were fragile. They feared it because they were accurate. A human alone really was more likely to die. Your body still runs on that math, even in a world where the math has completely changed. So what do you do with an alarm system built for a threat that mostly does not exist anymore? You cannot switch it off. It is wired too deep for that, older than language, older than fire. But you can answer it the way it was designed to be answered. Not with more scrolling, not with more notifications pretending to be company, with actual physical unscheduled presence. A phone call instead of a text. A meal at the same table instead of the same room with two different screens. The specific, old-fashioned experience of being seen by someone who would notice if you disappeared. It sounds almost too simple to be the answer to something this deep, but that is exactly what makes it so easy to miss. You have spent your whole life assuming connection is a nice to have. Something for weekends, something for when you have time. Your biology has never agreed with that. Your biology has been quietly voting the other way for 200,000 years. In cortisol, in inflammation, in the pull you feel to check a phone that has nothing new to say. So tonight, when that alarm goes off again, when you reach for your phone out of nowhere and you are not even sure why, remember what it actually is. It is not a habit. It is not boredom. It is the oldest part of you, still standing guard, still asking the same question it has always asked. Who would show up? The real danger was never being alone in the dark. The real danger is still right now, being alone in the light and telling yourself you are fine.